Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro is addressing the parliament on the state of the economy. Early last year, the currency, the bolivar, was devalued due to rising shortages. Basic necessities such as milk, flour and toilet paper have become valuable commodities. Venezuela's official inflation rate is over 54%, one of the highest in the world. But some economists estimate the rate could be as high as 283%. That's despite the country having the largest proven oil reserves in Latin America. But production is down over a third since 1998. Well, let's get more on this now. I'm joined by the economist Mark Weisbrot from Washington, D.C. Mark Weisbrot, Nicolás Maduro is still talking now and giving this economic address in the Venezuelan capital. But let me ask you, how much trouble is Venezuela's economy in? I mean, it has rampant inflation, some public services are near to collapse, and there's a critical shortage of basic necessities and goods. I mean, Maduro has some huge challenges ahead of him, doesn't he?
Well, yes, but I mean, I wouldn't want to exaggerate it. You know, the press has been saying the sky is falling in Venezuela for almost 14 years now, and it never happened. And in fact, if you look at the economy over the long haul from just the last decade or 11 years since the government got control over the oil industry, it's done very well. And in fact, you know, that's why poverty was reduced by half and extreme poverty by more than 70%. In fact, even in 2012, poverty fell by 20%, which was the biggest drop in the Americas. And those numbers are not in dispute. You can find them at the World Bank, the UN, the IMF, all of those things, all of those organizations. And so, you know, that's why the government has won almost every election except one out of the last 16 elections, and that was a referendum that was very close. So, you know, there's a reason for that. Now, the last year has been rough, and as you said, inflation is at 56%, but it has stabilized in the last few months. It's not continuing to rise. So the question is, when is it going to come down, and when are they going to stabilize the currency? Those are really the two main related problems. The shortages are really a result of the same thing, the problems in the exchange rate.
The issue of currency is very important. I mean, particularly foreign exchange. Maduro's accused a number of businesses of speculating on the foreign currencies. I mean, how can Venezuela put in tighter controls on foreign exchange without all the money going into the black market?
Well, lots of countries in the world have controls on foreign exchange, and much more than Venezuela does, including China, for example. So the controls are not necessarily the problem, but they do need a better exchange rate system. They need a system that doesn't result in periodic crises and devaluations, which is what you've had in the past few years. So that's what they have to figure out how to do. Now, they did have a very good recovery from the middle of 2010 to the middle of 2012, and inflation was actually falling even while they had very rapid economic growth. So they are capable of doing it, but right now they've got to figure out a way to provide enough dollars to the market so there are dollars for imports, so you don't have these shortages, so you bring down the black market rate and stabilize the currency and inflation. That's what they're going to have to do.
And just quickly, how does Venezuela's oil revenue fit into all of this? I mean, for a country that gets something like $90 billion a year in revenues, where's all that money going?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, and that's why I think they're never going to really have the kind of disaster scenarios that people are predicting, like 283% inflation. That's ridiculous. That's not going to happen, and they're not going to have a balance of payments crisis because they've got $90 billion of oil revenue a year. They got 500 billion barrels of oil, which is more than, you know, any country in the world, really. And so they're going to find a way to fix their exchange rate system. The question is when they do it.
Mark Weisbrot, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you.
Still to come.